Connection and food. I kind of said this on Sunday, but not quite this way. But connection plus food equals life. And we know that God wants life for us. In John, the first chapter, we're told that in speaking about the Word or Jesus, in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. And so God wants life for God's people, not just life, but abundant life, blessed life. And so part of that is being connected to others, and part of that is being able to have the food that we need in this world for the sustenance that brings life. Sometimes people need connection and food at the same time. Sometimes they need those things separately. As a pastor, I've seen empty cupboards. I remember one household where I was called to, they said they had an emergency food situation and there were other things going on in the household. So I stopped and we chatted and we prayed, and they actually opened their cupboard doors for me. And I think there was a half of a box of cereal. And so we called on the food pantry and were able to get them food. So they just needed food, Another time, I love to tell the story about Dale. Dale was a gentleman in his mid-80s when I knew him. And he walked just so lovingly with his wife, Velma, through cancer. And eventually cancer took her life. When I would visit Dale and Velma while Velma had cancer, I would sit at the end of the table. Velma would sit on one side and Dale would sit on the other. And we would, again, talk, and we'd read scripture, and we'd share Holy Communion. When I went to see Dale after Velma died, I sat at the end of the table. Dale sat where Velma used to sit, and his chair was empty. It was just so noticeable to me. I don't know why. It just was, I guess. And so I asked him, I said, why are you sitting in Velma's chair? And he said, I guess I'd rather sit in her chair and see mine empty than to sit in my chair. Yeah, you get the point. He'd rather look at his own empty chair than to look at hers. Dale didn't need food. He had the money he needed to buy food. He needed company, companionship, just that connection. And I didn't have a meal at that time to invite Dale to, but would have loved to have had that. So connection and food brings with it kind of this sense of shalom that the Hebrew Bible talks about. Health, well-being, wholeness, self-respect, dignity, and without either one of those, life is less, right? So just a couple words about the ELCA World Hunger and Domestic Hunger Program. Domestic hunger, when I was growing up, world hunger was kind of the thing. Hunger was always over there. And somebody said, well, that's because you live on a farm. And I suppose maybe that's true. We had meat, we had milk, we had vegetables and canned goods that my mom and dad worked to put in storage for winter. So, but it was just that I always thought hunger was over there. Today, the ELCA under World Hunger has what they call the domestic hunger unit. Our church is realizing that hunger is more and more an issue all the time. And so this is a domestic hunger grant that we've received, and we're grateful for it. And it's a great opportunity for us here in Indiana. Three priorities that the ELCA has in connection with the domestic hunger grants. They want them to be transformative. And I think ours is. It can be for sure. I had the opportunity to talk with Mosaic folks last week over here. Just a delight to talk to them. So when I can get out of my own world, my own space, and just sit for a little while and talk to somebody who's got different struggles than me, I'm blessed. We have people from income-based housing who come to our meetings. We have singles, we have couples, we have families. And again, what a blessing it is for maybe an elderly person just to sit among young children and just hear them chat. I mean, what a blessing that. Just that alone, might be so transformative. The second thing is holistic. So we may meet the needs of the stomach, but to be a holistic meal means that we try to meet more of the needs of the whole person. So again, connection. And there are a number of different ways that we can do that. And the third is integrated. And I think this is where we have the most potential to grow is, as we think about hunger, we might think about why is there hunger? We might think about, somewhere down the road, we might think about housing issues. We know that housing can be expensive and unaffordable for some people in town. We know that just some folks need some financial education from time to time. We've done Financial Peace University here. And there may be other ways that we can accompany people in terms of just helping them learn to budget and some of those things. Cooking from scratch, the food pantry, I think, is hesitant to give out a lot of raw materials because a lot of people, many people these days don't even know how to cook from scratch. So again, integrated. How can we integrate this, not just to think about the stomach, but to think about the whole person?
Right. We could probably put that in like a scavenger hunt. On the back of this hand again sheet is connections to things I want to remember. Like I have my sign up list on there because I want to remember all of you guys being here. How I fit in, because I want you to constantly think, how do I fit into this? And then questions or comments that you have. So just something there. We're going to look at PLCA. We set up some goals with them. But go in the right order. I have these correctly with 4s and 2s and 1s. Oh, and you guys have them last night. All right. There we go. So this grant came about, Pastor Rod called me about a week before the grant was due. And it took me about the first day of that week of panic to figure out how to apply and to get permission to do the application. And then I, at that time, sat down and wrote some things. And from my perspective as a mental health advocate working for the county and realizing that the people that I see on a regular basis on the weekdays, I don't necessarily see on Sunday mornings. Now there's a little crossover Wednesday nights, and that's awesome. And I think that's what we're kind of looking at for some of this. But so what we're looking at with these things that I just said about ELCA, a just world where all are fed. Why Amanda's like a big church, a small town, in a rural state. We don't have a lot of flashy kinds of needs. We don't have gun violence, and we don't have, lots of public transportation, and we don't have a lot of anything like that. But we are a place where people are hungry. And I see that in my office because my new responsibilities as the general assistance director, interim director, I'm helping people who need money for rent, for people who need money for utilities, for a funeral they can't afford, helping them find how to sign up for Medicaid, how to sign up for food stamps, all those kinds of things. And it's amazing the circumstances that people are coming from. And when I mentioned that we have a warm meal here on Wednesday nights, they're excited. So Wednesday night meal is one of the best kept secrets, I think, in Forest City, Iowa, and that's something that we're working on changing. It also is something that is a program that qualified for this grant simply because you can't get an ELC domestic hunger grant to start a new program. You have to use it to expand an existing program. So the fact that they recognize us with $20,000 said, hey, we've got something going here. So we have something to celebrate. Straight from the start. Basically, we looked at some goals. They said, you need to have 3 goals. I'm like, well, here I am writing this in my house all by myself. I wonder what kind of goals we should all agree to. So they said a shared goal of a just world where all are fed. What are the goals that you hope to achieve during the life of this grant? The life of the grant is 3 years. And so they had things like what activities will move you towards this goal. So you have to think of that. How will you measure your progress towards this goal? So you can't just have this lofty thing that you can't measure. And then how will you identify and share your success towards this goal? And so they're already looking at ways that we can communicate and share. So the 3 goals that I came up with are on the back side of this. Goal number 1, develop a comprehensive communication strategy for connections through food. Boy, that sounds good. And they thought so too, so that's good. But basically, how do we communicate internally to the people that we have at our church about getting involved, about coming to a meal, about helping others come to a meal, about volunteering? And then how do we share that information so that people in the community know that it's a really good secret and we're not keeping it secret anymore? And then how do we share our successes? Secondly, to improve the quality of connections to food, meal, and meal experience. And so again, like I said, they're not gonna fund something that was already a success. So we know that we're doing something successful, but we're gonna strive to do better. And better would mean, in some ways, looking at how many processed foods are we using versus whole foods, fresh fruits and vegetables versus canned. There's a number of things that we talked about last night at our session, and it comes down to a labor kind of thing too. How many potatoes peel themselves for potato salad? Not a lot. And so we're going to be looking at upping some of those volunteer opportunities so that we're able to not increase staff costs, but be able to enhance the meal. And then the meal experience. I've seen some of you guys down there, and we know that the dining room is a place where people can connect, where people can kind of stay off by themselves. And we want to make sure that that meal experience is welcoming, that it has dignity to it, that we're not forcing God on anyone, but we're also inviting them. And then we also want to make sure that we're helping them meet additional needs besides food needs. So having an opportunity to get a meal, maybe a meal to take home with them if there's extra, if they need something like that. But looking at bringing in resources so that we can connect them to other things in the community while they're here. And then finally, utilize connections for food as a catalyst to link people to community resources. So we would be a place where people can come. Elderly people might not know that there's an elderly waiver, and if they qualify from a financial standpoint, they can get help paying their Medicare premiums with Medicaid. So there's all those kinds of things that you can leverage, making sure that if someone is qualified for some food stamps, that they feel comfortable signing up for that and not feel like, oh, I don't need that, and then they're struggling. Making sure that people are getting connected with our health services through public health and the programs they have for infants to 5-year-olds, so that all those kinds of things, we can be a source of information and help people get connected. And then also connecting people through resources, but connecting other resources that we have in our community, leveraging things like the food bank, the Lions Club, Walnut College. There's all kinds of partnerships that we can create. We've actually put in our grant saying we're going to do it, so I hope we can create. So anyway, so that's a little bit about the goals. Do you guys have questions about those 3 goals? They're very broad and intentionally so. So with the goals that we developed, we thought we need a structure to be able to organize activities to meet those goals. And so we came up with the idea of task teams. And then we decided, let's like modernize that a little bit. And Anne's probably going, that's not hard, but we're going with teams. So anyway, we're gonna have some teams here. So the first one, and I'm gonna have handouts for you with more specifics on all these, but I'm just gonna review real quick with you. A communications team. They are gonna hold listening events. They are going to work on a mission statement, a logo. They're gonna update the website. They're gonna do things like temple talks. One of the activities for year 2 and year 3 that every team will be involved in is a community resource fair that we'll hold either here or at Boulder to be able to help people see all the different resources that are available. And then in year 3, proposed a hunger symposium where we would actually work with Boulder again to bring in maybe a domestic hunger speaker from the ELCA and have some things that we'll do things with Walder students and the community in our church. So that's kind of what the communications team is going to do. They're going to function like within the communications. Then we have the community resource liaison team, And they are a group that's gonna work with the technology people, which is Zach. And they are gonna help put together a database of resources, work on having a computer kiosk. We got computers in the last grant that we wrote, to have a computer downstairs hooked to a printer that can scan things, that can print things. A lot of times people need to provide pay stubs or other information, bank information for benefits. Well, this would be a way that they could actually get that taken care of, not during the work day. We also look at, that community would bring in some resources, so maybe we wanna bring in, the folks from Public Health Limit, so that they can be here and kind of share what they do. And then they would also be looking at seeking out lived experience from folks to help inform some of the things that we do. The food production, nutrition, and safety team, that sounds like a mouthful, and it sounds like there's, but what it is a group of people that would help to increase the amount of fruits and vegetables that are used. It will decrease the amount of processed foods. It would work on safety of preparing foods and getting equipment that would help to say, like right now, if you go downstairs and you look at knives, there are some good knives and there are some not good knives. And so if we're going to increase the number of things that need to be chopped, then we need to increase the quality of things that we chop with. And so they'll be looking at those kinds of things. Also, this idea of having a garden to table relationship, or using 4-H people, or Mary Kingman, who was here last night, she goes, oh, we have a huge garden, we all set produce. And so when the food bank says no more tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchinis, or apples, then the manual's like, hey, bring them on. So we're really looking at people can participate. If you're not a team player, you can participate by being a gardener, or someone who prays, or someone who cuts, or whatever. So there are a number of different ways to get involved. The hospitality and resource team is the group that's going to create an atmosphere of invitation, dignity, and assistance to all who participate on Wednesday nights. I'm looking at someone right there, a couple people, that's what they do. And I'm sure that we can go around the room and hear all the different people who invite and to provide a safe place to be, to encourage people, to help them have a world of dignity. Some of the people that I would work with on a regular basis don't live a very dignified life. And part of that's mental illness, part of that's their circumstances. But we have a chance to really treat people with dignity here, and that can make a big difference in their lives. The hospitality team will also be looking for feedback, and so it's going to be important for them to have a method to do that. The volunteer support team is going to work with the communications team to identify things that need to be done, to write job descriptions for those things, to communicate with potential volunteers what needs to happen. And then they're also going to be working on training. And then they will do things to support and celebrate volunteers. I think one thing that we're really good at Emmanuel and a number of other places is to ask people to help us. And then we kind of think, but we don't. We kind of train, but we don't. We kind of lift them up, but we don't. So here's a dedicated committee that their job is to do those kinds of things and be intentional about taking care of our volunteers. So that is that. Then an overarching leadership team. And Rod and I hadn't really talked about this before last night, so I kind of just put a little star there. But we're talking about a steering committee that would have some representation from the different teams or people that want to serve in that capacity. That would be the link back to the ELCA for the grant. It would be a group of people that would help to sign up on budget requests and things like that, and kind of be thinking of the big picture as we go through some of these other partnerships. Other ways to get involved in that. Prayer support. One of the first things that Ron and I talked about was we need the intercessors. we need that group of people that are so faithful to pray for the people and the programs on Manual, and that will continue. And so not having our own prayer team doesn't mean that we don't believe in prayer, but we've got a team, all right? Let's go ahead and use them. Word of mouth advertising. If you use a meal and you like it, then don't speak with your mouth full, but go out and talk about the meal. And so that's going to be important. Bring somebody with you to the meal. That's something where asking a neighbor, now that we're able to be a little closer together, I'm like was for the first time in a long time. This is my first full day. That's kind of weird. So, but bringing somebody in your car and bringing them along to the meal will be something that is a little easier to do. Delivering meals. I know that during the pandemic times, we had a lineup of cars out there picking up delivery meals, and they were handing up dog treats to lucky dogs that got to deliver to. But we continue to deliver meals. Right now, Dawn said that we have between 30 and 40 meals going out every week to be eaten outside of the dining room. Dave and I, at one point, were delivering up to 10 meals to folks, and I still have one lady that I deliver to every Wednesday, and I'll get a call at work, are you coming tonight? And if it's a cold day, we don't visit very long, but we always have to look to see if we can see her cat, because she thinks it's fun that the cat and I are getting along. So being not a cat person and very allergic, it's like, wow, what a cool idea. I've never sponsor a private night. So many of us have private dollars, and I know Barb, you've done this before, where you sponsored a night.
I just feel, oh, yeah.
And if we are able to do something like that, we had originally asked for $30,000. We were originally turned down completely. Then they came back and said, hey, we've got more money. We're gonna fund you for $20,000. So instead of getting $10,000 the first year, we're getting $6,800. And according to my math, that means that we have $3,200 that we were thinking we were getting that we're not. Now, do we say, oh, then we're gonna do $3,200 less of stuff? Or do we come up with creative ways of funding those things? So in year 2 and 3, we've got some things in place where we're gonna actually look for additional grant money so that we can continue to expand what we're doing. In year 1, we're gonna be looking at leveraging some things that are a little bit more liquid, like private money that you can apply for and get within a month's time or something like that. So we'll be looking for those options at least on a monthly basis, if not more frequently, because that's going to help us to cover some of those costs as we get started. We're looking for people who can volunteer on a recurrent basis or a one-time activity. Some people like to have, before I go play cards, I'm going to go cut vegetables at the church, and other people like, I got time this week, I'm gonna sign up and I'm gonna go and done, and I'll sign up for next week. So we're looking for capturing people who have all kinds of different things going on in their life. Financially supporting the CTF or the Connections for Food. If you are looking at ways to use memorial money, if you're looking at ways to give a gift in honor of someone, if you're just feeling inspired and want to donate money, making sure that it's marked for the grant expenses, that would be helpful. Sharing ideas. We'll have time over coffee to do a little more sharing. And so helping us hear what your ideas are, not just us sharing yours, or sharing ours. And then finally, the Soli Deo Gloria. Every Lutheran college has Soli Deo Gloria somewhere, which means God alone be the glory. That we're not doing this because we're a cool church, and we're not doing this because we have the best dessert, or we're doing anything. We're doing it because it glorifies God and serves the people that He wants us to serve.